So first workshop today is all about pricing, and it's all about profit. So what I wanted to do, instead of talk about pricing in detail with numbers and maths, so it all just kind of switch off, I wanted to talk more about profit and what makes a jewellery business profitable. Because I think that that's something that a lot of us could struggle with. And of course, if we're not making a profit, it's not sustainable. And then we have to get other jobs and do other things. And then our jewellery making time is reduced. So I'm always really passionate about helping jewellers to make a profit from what they do. I remember when I started my business, quite a few people said, you won't be able to make a living from that. And luckily I didn't listen. And if anyone has ever said that to you before, I really encourage you not to listen either. You can kindly not listen, thank you for your feedback, but there is always a possibility to build something profitable. And something that I've learned is there's really creative ways as well. It's not always just one straight line. You never know what you're going to end up doing. I always wanted to start my own jewellery brand and take over the world through my jewellery brand. And then I ended up having a jewellery school, which I loved even more than that. So you never know where it's going to lead to, what avenue you might go down. So just stay really open to different kind of ideas, different possibilities, and just know that whatever you want is possible for you. So, all right, a few questions. Well, before we get into the content, I just want to say a massive thank you to everyone who was involved in making the book, because of course my face is on it, in case you didn't know. And everywhere, but it really wasn't just my book. Loads of people helped make this happen. Emma Renee is the book designer. She couldn't be with us here today, but she did a fantastic job making it look really gorgeous. She spent many days, nights working around her young children to make that happen. And then of course the amazing Jewellers Academy team, like Anna, we have Alice at the back who you'll be able to meet as well. People like Sally and Tori and Laura Jane who aren't here today, Karen Young whose photography is in it, and Vicky Knights, and just it was a whole team effort. So people often say to me oh, I don't know how you do it all, and I always say I don't. Loads of other people do it, so it's really important to know that, I think. And the same with your jewellery businesses. As you start out, it's often small and it's just us, but if you do have ambitions to grow and you want to build bigger things, you may need to get other people involved, and there's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it can be a real sort of strength. So I encourage you to kind of embrace more of a community aspect to your businesses and not feel like you have to do it all on your own, because no successful business is run solely by one person. There's always people involved, and everyone who works for me is way better than me at doing the things that they do, and that's why it works so well. So just a massive thank you to those people. So then the next thing I wanted to talk about, with the focus of profit, why is profit so important? Because I think often as jewellers and makers, we think, well, I'm not really that interested in money. I do this because I love it. Otherwise, we'd go and work, at a bank or wherever. But if we don't have profit, we can't grow. So profit to me is the way that a business can grow. And it might be investing in training. If you want to do another diploma program, you need to have some profit to be able to pay for it. Or it might be that you're investing in your tools and your machinery. It might be you're investing in your stock so that you have more stock available. So there's loads of things that you can do when you have profit. And conversely, when you don't, it's really difficult to grow a business without any funds to kind of bootstrap every minute, day to day. We all start, well, we don't all, but a lot of us start there. But I really want you to feel encouraged that don't worry, it sounds silly, but don't worry about having too much money in your business. Because people do, they think, oh, I don't need so much, I can charge a little bit less, I'll be okay. But if you have more, you can invest more, you can do more, you can offer more to other people, and just everything is a lot easier. So I want us to kind of open our minds to the idea of it's a good thing to focus on profit. It's a good thing to want money in your business. It's a good thing to want money for yourself. There's plenty in the world. There is plenty for everyone to have it. You're not taking it away from anyone else. And sometimes that's a mindset thing. So we feel like, oh, I shouldn't have it, it's greedy. So there's some stuff about that in the book, which I'll let you have a look at as well. But I definitely encourage you to really just kind of want this for yourself, want to build something that is profitable for you. So the other thing is it's sustainable. And this really motivated me when I started my business. I was 19 when I started, I was quite young, and it was this kind of thing of either I make this work or I have to do a job that I don't really want to do. And I have to commute, which I really didn't want to do, and get on the tube every day, really didn't want to do that. And just the whole office environment, I'd done it for a little while, and I thought, I was really motivated, like I really want to do this. And I've seen, even just talking to some of you over there just now, you're like, I really want to do this. And I think that's great to have that passion and that excitement. That will see you through all the little challenges that will come as you go through building your business. So the sustainability aspect was really important. When I say sustainability, I mean that you can keep doing it, that you can keep making. And sometimes people say, well, I don't really want to spend time on Instagram, or I don't really want to spend time doing my emails or whatever, like the boring bits perhaps of business. But when you think about the compromise of then doing a whole job that you didn't want to do, that's worth it. It's worth doing that hour a day or whatever it is of this isn't ideal, because then we can make the rest of the time. And what someone else was saying as well is it's just such a lovely feeling when someone buys your jewelry and then you see them with it and you're happy and you're like, oh, that was mine. So whilst there are some difficult bits and some of the things we're going to be asking you to do today might not be what you wake up and dream about, like can't wait to post on Instagram, or I mean some of you might, but or going through your finances, I always keep it in context, like doing this allows me to have the dream that I want. Like with the book, getting it on Amazon, total nightmare. Did not enjoy that at all. But creating the book, being here today with you guys, seeing the difference it's going to make in people's lives makes those bits worth it. So that's something I think that's quite important. Okay, quick show of hands. Who here has ever worried about money? Yeah, everyone, right? At some point in our lives. And who here worries that they won't make a profit in their business? Yeah, pretty much everyone as well. And who here thinks that that is because, or worries that that is because their business skills aren't good enough? So that's a lot of us as well. So that's exactly what this workshop is about today, what we're kind of working on. And I think what I just wanted to do there is show that we all have these fears. We all worry about money to some extent, some of us a lot, some of us just every now and then. We all worry that it's perhaps because of us that we're not making money. And there is some truth in that. It's not us, it's not that we're not good enough, but sometimes we don't know what to do. And running a profitable jewelry business is not that hard. It's not easy, but it's not that hard. It's something that, if you do a few things and you do them in the right way and you work on it over time, it kind of generally works, like as a general theme. And I've seen that happen with literally hundreds of jewelers over the time. But there's always that moment when you have to kind of prove to yourself that you can do it. And until that happens, you never really believe that it's possible. So I just wanted to share a little story with you guys before we get into some of the kind of doing some work together in your workbooks. Hopefully everyone has got one of these. In a minute, we're just going to go through, and hopefully everyone's got a pen. Otherwise, we'll come around and give some out, because we're going to do a little bit of work together today. You're not just going to sit and listen. We're going to work hard. So I wanted to tell you a little story before that about the moment when I first realized that my business was making a profit. And it's kind of a funny story. So I was making and selling jewelry, and it was going okay. I did some markets. I stood in the rain. People told me my jewelry was too expensive. Nobody bought. It was kind of depressing. And then I did some where people did buy, and I was like, oh my goodness, this is the best thing in the world. So I had kind of all the different experiences, learning where I needed to be for my jewelry, and where I didn't need to be. And I was making a little bit, but it didn't turn a profit, because the money that I was spending was greater than the money I was getting in. And it was coming up to, I'd been doing it for a couple of years, and I'd started doing some teaching and a few other little bits and pieces. And I thought, I really need to, at this point, make a decision. Like, if it's not making a profit by now, I'm going to have to look at some other options, because I think it'd been about 3 years at this point. And it wasn't looking good. The money in my bank wasn't looking great. So I was kind of, weighing it up. And back in the day, everyone paid through PayPal. And I don't know if it's still like this, but PayPal used to have, it took money into your account. And you had to ask PayPal to move the money from the PayPal account into the bank account, which I didn't realize. So I was just looking at my bank account, and one day I log into my PayPal account and there's thousands in there that I didn't even know that I had. And I'm like, oh my goodness, there's more money than I thought. And that's how bad I am at managing my day-to-day finances. So if I can do it, you guys can definitely do it. But I just remember being so happy, not because the money, but just because I had proved to myself the concept that this business works. And once I had that, I knew that all I had to do was just keep going, find new customers, build strategies. But until that point, I just was I didn't really believe. I knew I wanted it. I knew that I was trying, but I hadn't proven it. And I think that the moral of that story for me was that we all have to have our moment where we say, okay, I can see that this works. And if you haven't had that yet, then I would encourage you to search for it and think about, all the things we're going to talk about today when it comes to pricing, when it comes to your products, when it comes to how you communicate with your customers. Think about what would it take for you to say, I know that this business model works, and it's just a case of me tweaking it and doing it in my own way. Because once you have that, then you're off. And it's kind of just the rest is history kind of thing. Okay, so coming to your workbooks, we're going to do a little bit now. So if you open it to the first page, we'll start there. It asks you what stage is your business at. So I'm just going to talk about the 3 different stages of business, and we might go into it a bit more in a little bit. So the first stage is, and we talk about this in the book as well, is generally speaking your first 100 customers. So if you are getting your first 100 customers, that's generally speaking your first stage. Or you might say your first £10,000. If each customer spends an average of £100, that'd be around £10,000. So this often takes, it can take a year, it could take 3 years, it can take 4 years. It depends if you're working part-time or all sorts of different variables. So if you are at the first stage, and this is what a lot of us get wrong, I think. It's not all about posting on Instagram every day and sending loads of emails and having an amazing website. Of course, that's an awesome thing to do and be building. But the first 100 customers really comes from people who you already know and people who they already know. So it's a lot closer than you think. And this can be difficult because a lot of us are introverted and we don't want to tell everybody around us what we are doing. Not everyone. I met some of you. You're more extroverted. That's awesome. This stage should be easier for you. But I know that it can be hard to share about what you're doing. And especially what a lot of us do is we say, they're not going to be interested in our minds unconsciously. My mum's not interested. My dad's not interested. My auntie's. I know none of them like jewellery. But all of those people know a lot of people, and everybody knows somebody who likes jewellery. And if you know 10 people who might be interested in buying from you, and those 10 people know 10 more people, then you've got your 100. So this is what I would really encourage you to focus on if you are still in that stage, which I think a lot of us are, of getting that first 10K worth of sales. And there's different ways you can do this. It's the way that I like to focus on is having conversations. So instead of trying to sell to anyone, just tell people what's going on for you. For example, you've come to an event today. Talk to your partner about it. Talk to your daughter or your friend or your cousin and say what you're worried about. I'm worried about that this business might not be profitable. That's something that concerns me. Start having connections, because they might not immediately say, oh my goodness, I need to buy your jewellery, but they'll have you in mind, and they might go for coffee with someone tomorrow and say, oh, they're getting married. Oh, I know someone who, so you start to build these kind of connections. And I think that we can't undervalue that. A lot of us go straight to social media and just post there, and we're going to get onto that. And I love that. You guys know that. So it's not to say that we won't do that, but that comes afterwards, because what these first 100 customers do for you is they give you some income so that you can build up your tools, you can build up your collections, you can build up your basis. They can give you testimonials so that you have social proof, you have people behind you. They build up your confidence. And, you know, think creatively. Do you go to any groups? Are you part of anything? I don't know, the gym, a tennis club, church, mums, you know, whatever it is, anything that you're part of, share about it there. And again, it's not selling, but just sharing and saying who you are, what you do. And these are the people that are going to be your like first little crew. So don't forget about those. That's stage one. Stage two is about building your presence online. And this is all about getting total strangers to buy from you who don't know who you are, never heard of you before, and might live on the other side of the world to you. So this is where what I call the sales machine, which is your Instagram, your email marketing, or if you're not on Instagram, it might be something else, Facebook, and also your website are really important. So these things, if you've been working on that, it's brilliant, because you don't want to just focus on the people close to you and then get to the end of you've kind of exhausted that whole network and you've got nothing to go next. So whilst you're doing that alongside it, you kind of want to build up this sales machine so that people can then start to transition to, oh, I heard about you from somewhere, I've bought something, but now I can just pass your link on. We don't even need to have a connection that's as close anymore. And when I come to your website, I see all these reviews because 100 people have bought from you already, and you've got this confidence. And I think one of the biggest things that I see when I look at a jewelry business online, I can tell what their confidence level is just by looking at what they've got. You know, I can see, and it's kind of a sense that people get. And it's all about trust. Jewelry is a trust-based purchase. If I'm buying from you as a customer, a lot of customers don't know what is the difference between this type of gold and that type of gold. They're trusting us that we understand and we've priced it correctly. They don't know how to tell the difference between different gemstones sometimes, or whatever it is they're buying. So they really need to feel like you've got their back. And the only way that they're going to have that is by building those initial customers and then building this kind of sales machine. So that's the second stage. Stage two. Stage three is more, so that's kind of like you've got around 500 customers usually by that point. So when you're going to like 500 plus, that's stage three, which we call the growth stage. And this is where you really just want to decide what you want. So you've got customers, you've got people buying from you, you've got an income. You may or may not be profitable, because you can build quite a big business, and I definitely did this. That is not profitable. Quite a stressful thing to do. Don't recommend it. Loads of money coming in, loads of money going out, nothing left for you at the end, you're exhausted. So this is where you want to really focus and say, what do you want in the long term? What do you want from this? If you're going from 500 customers to thousands perhaps, or just, you know, carrying on with the trajectory you've already got. Do you want to have a shop? Do you want to start teaching? Do you want to focus on collections? Do you want to be selling one-off pieces? And this is where I ask you to pick a path to growth so that you're not doing everything all at once. And that's where it really becomes about focus, and it becomes definitely about getting other people involved, and it becomes about really just kind of choosing what you want to do and going for it. So first question is, what stage are you at? So I'd ask you to write that down. Then next up, we're going to have a look at, there's kind of 5 main things that I look at when I'm looking at the profitability of a jewelry business. So we're going to go through them and we're going to kind of look at them. So it says, what is your main focus for profitability based on this stage? So if you have a little think about that while we're going through, and just jot some notes down for yourself. But I'm going to go through the 5 areas of profitability, and you can see in here you've kind of got some bits. So I would just encourage you to, have a brainstorm, and I'm going to get you to talk to each other in just a minute. So we'll start with the first one. So the first area that I look at when I'm looking at the profitability of a jewelry business is the jewellery. So the products, the things that you're selling. And you've probably looked at your jewellery from different perspectives before. You've probably thought, do I like it? Do my customers like it? Do I enjoy making it? Often we think, am I good enough? Are my skills good enough? Can I get the materials? So there's all different angles that we're already looking at our jewellery. But today, I'm asking you to look at it from the lens of profitability. So is the jewellery you're making, does it have the potential to be profitable? And profit comes when our income is greater than our expenses. And our expenses include things like our time and everything else that goes into it. So for example, if you make silver jewellery, and you predominantly make silver jewellery, I wouldn't usually spend more than a day making a piece of silver jewellery. Because generally speaking, and there are some exceptions, especially in niches, but generally speaking, it can't warrant the kind of price tag that I would need for me to put multiple days into it. Then if I'm working with gold, I might have about 3 days on average to be able to make that piece, because I can warrant a higher price tag, I can get a greater profit margin, so I can work more in there. If I'm making a lot of jewellery and at lower prices, is it very quick and easy for me to make? So when we think about it through the lens of profitability, and I don't suggest you only ever think about it through this lens, because it can stifle creativity, but we need to, as business owners, look from different perspectives at different times, is to think, is the jewellery you're making profitable? Are you giving yourself a chance? Because if the jewellery you're making doesn't have profit margin in it, then it doesn't matter if you get everything else right, it's not going to work out. So we need to have a think about the time it's taking us to make things, the materials that are going into it, and does it make sense? That's always the question I ask myself, is does it make sense? Can I see room for this? So I just want you to spend 2 minutes talking to the person next to you about your jewellery, and you can do 2s or 3s, and just have a minute or so each and just talk about what you're making already and ask each other these kind of questions to get an idea. Is there anything you need to change in your current collection? Do you need to, first of all, have you made any jewellery yet? Which is fine if you haven't, and if you haven't, maybe thinking about what you might like to make, what materials you're going to be using, whether or not you think there's room for profit in there. If you already make and sell jewellery, is it working? Because it's very easy to, not easy, but it happens a lot where you create a business, but there just is no profit in the product. So I just want you to have a couple of minutes thinking about that, and then we'll come back, and if anyone wants to share anything, they can. So go for it. Meet your friend next to you. So, did anyone have anything that they wanted to share, or any kind of moments where they were like, oh, what I'm making is super unprofitable, I need to change this, or any little tweaks? Does anyone want to share anything? Oh, that's how we get a quiet room.
I think one of the things,
shout out, yes, please, go for it.
That's difficult when you start is in terms of,
Go for it. The mics, it's interesting with the mics because it won't make you sound any louder. It's for show. It's for the camera crew.
I feel very important now.
You are.
One of the things that's really difficult, I had a jewelry business some years ago, was getting materials at prices that you could then sell them at a reasonable price. To actually get wholesale discounts and things. That has improved now. I've had a big break and I've just started looking around again. It has improved, and you have various organizations you can join that'll give you discounts. But it's still hard to find. I find a lot of jewelers, for example, they are really secretive about where they are sourcing from.
No one here, of course.
No, exactly. We're all sharing and caring.
Yes, yeah.
But that is an issue that I think a lot of people stumble into. So you feel then, looking around at the market, whatever you have produced at a rather high cost, you can't really add much of a profit margin.
Yeah.
That's just my thought.
Yeah, no, that's a really interesting point. Thank you for sharing. And I think that's something I discovered as well when I started my jewelry business, is I thought there'd be all these wholesale places where I could get stuff for like half the price, because that's what you can do in other industries. You can get things for half the price, but with jewelry you can't. And that's and I think that there's a little element of people being secretive, but I also think the main thing is that you just can't. There aren't wholesale prices for gold or silver or gemstones, often because it's a commodity. But even with some of the other materials, you can't. And I think what I would encourage you to do is really focus on adding value way over and above the raw materials. Way over and above the raw materials. So this is all about developing your signature style and developing something that is unique to you, so that it doesn't matter if somebody on the stall next to you is selling silver for cost price. We can't change that that's going to happen. It's always going to happen. We can get mad, but it doesn't help us. It doesn't help anyone else. That's just part of life. And we've all, well, we might not have all, but some of us have been that person because we didn't know any better, or because we thought it would help, or, you know, we were nervous about overcharging or whatever it is. So I think really to build your confidence as a jeweler, to build something that you know you're not competing with anybody else, you know, that is just yours. And also to build those relationships with customers where they come for you and they don't care if it's cheaper somewhere else. You know, we all have experience of buying things that we'll pay more for because of the place, because of the quality, because of the brand, because of the connection. We can always find something cheaper, and I think really important with jewelry, it's a luxury product, but it's also an emotional purchase. So as jewelers, we need to think about it differently. People are not comparing the way that we're comparing. And the more that we focus on what we add value to, and don't look at competing with other people and trying to get the lowest. So, like the race to the bottom, everybody loses. And when we are undercharging for what we're doing or undervaluing our work, everybody loses again. You know, the customer loses as well. They may feel like they've gained something in the moment, but they don't, because we all kind of know that experience as well, where you buy something and you know it probably should have cost more. And okay, if it's a giant conglomerate, you're like, yes. But if it's a handmade jeweler and they're out of business in a few years, you don't really feel good about that purchase. So this is kind of, as well, it brings in the Handmade and Well Paid campaign, which hopefully you should all guys have a little kind of flyer for it, which you can use in your workshops and just for your customers, but also to remind you that it's really important that you're charging well for what you're doing. And it's better to lose customers and have a few better quality ones than to have loads of people who are wanting to buy from you for less. And I think this is an important thing when we think about stage one as well, that if we've got one person and they're sharing with 10 people and they're sharing with 10 people, if that one person got it for too cheap and then they're sharing with 10 other people who want it for too cheap, and then you're just building this unprofitable business. Whereas if you find one good customer who's happy to pay the right price for what you're doing and cares about that, they will know other people who care about that, and they will know other people. So you're kind of just like elevating your whole offering and your whole customer base. So it's scary to begin with because you feel like you're losing something because you're turning people away potentially or putting people off. But those are the people you want to put off. And just trust in the process and believe in yourself that you will find the right people who really value what you do. But thank you, that was a really good point, and I'm sure it's one that people will come across as well. But yeah, don't worry, I would say, about sourcing things cheaper. Worry or focus on building something that is so great that people are not price sensitive. They just want your stuff. So, because you're awesome. Awesome. Okay, we're going to move on to the next point, and then we're going to do the same. So the next point is pricing. Woohoo! Our favourite. Glad there was a big cheer for that. So in this workshop, I'm not going through in detail the pricing because, like I said, it's all in the book and there's spreadsheets, and it's going to be way easier for you to digest that information when you're looking at the numbers. But it is really important that your jewellery is priced for profit, that you are not undercharging, and that you have considered all the costs that you have involved. So just a very brief kind of idea about what profit is. There's two main types of profit. There is gross profit and there is net profit. So net profit is what most of us think of as profit. That's what we have at the end that can kind of go in our pockets. Very crudely, if there's an accountant in the room, I'm sorry. I know it's more complicated. That's why we love you guys and use you guys. Gross profit is, so first of all, you have revenue or income. So, and there's lots of terms for the same thing, which can make it confusing, but sales, revenue, income, they all mean the same thing. They mean money coming into your business. So if I sell 100 necklaces for £1 each, don't do that, but I just want simple maths. Then I've got £100 of sales or revenue or income. And if those necklaces cost me 50p each to make in terms of materials and in terms of my time, they're called the cost of goods sold. And you know if it's a cost of good because if I had to make 10 necklaces, it would go up 10 times. And if I made one necklace, it would be just 1/10. So the cost of goods sold minus that, so if you have your income, take away the cost of goods, that's your gross profit. If all of this doesn't go in, don't worry, it's fine. It's just to give a bit of background. So that figure is quite useful just to understand the health of your business. It's not your profit. It's a bit confusing, but it does help you understand the health of your business. And generally speaking, as an industry standard, we want that to be about 60%. Then you've got all your fixed costs, which are also sometimes called overheads. And these are things that stay the same no matter how many necklaces you make. So your website costs the same whether you make one necklace or 100. Your heating bill is the same whether you make one necklace or 100. Your training is the same whether you make one or 100. So those are things, fixed costs, that don't go up. So after all of those have taken off, that's where you have your profit at the end. So that is something that we want to focus on. And it's okay, like I said before, to have too much money in your business. It is better to be charging more and to be offering more to your customers. This is where we focus on adding value, different ways in which you can add value, like having gorgeous packaging, having lovely photographs, giving them a really lovely experience, whether that's online or in person. Just going that extra mile for people really goes a long way. So that's much more important and where we should be focusing, not cutting costs. So cutting costs in business is not a way to grow. It can help in a crisis. So cutting costs is a crisis management strategy. If you are struggling for a short period of time, you may need to cut costs just to get through. But if your goal to make a profit is just finding every way you can cut things down, first of all, that's miserable. Also, it doesn't work because growth comes from investment, from getting new materials, from getting new tools, from getting new training, and from being inspired yourself. People buy from your energy. So if you have a feeling of kind of abundance and you're moving forwards, it sounds really kind of, woo-woo, but it works. It's not all practical. It is a feeling, it's a feel-good factor. You love what you're doing, you're moving forwards with it. People want to be part of that. So just remember that as well, because I had quite a few years in business where I just thought, I just need to find the cheapest way to do everything so that it all can match up, and it didn't work, and it was really stressful. But actually, when you kind of let go a bit and you say, I'm going to focus on what I want, I'm going to set the vision and go for that, and the rest kind of falls in around it. So we don't have to control everything in our business for it to be successful. Okay, yes, go for it.
Add one thing. When you're doing that, looking for the cheapest way, that's where the whole idea of how valuable your time is comes into it as well.
Absolutely.
How much time are you spending on looking for that best deal when you could actually have been making something?
Yes, love that. Yeah, you spend like 3 hours and I'm like, I saved 10p, yes. And you think, what is my hourly rate here? And it is quite a good idea to write down for yourselves what you'd like your hourly rate to be. Not what you think it should be, but what you would like it to be. And when you're spending time on things, asking yourself, should you be doing that? Or should somebody else be doing that? And that's something we'll look at in a bit. Things like polishing and finishing up, sometimes that can be outsourced. If it takes you 3 hours to finish a piece, or you can pay the polishers £6, what's your hourly rate here? And so those are the kind of things. Often when we start out, we do everything. And that's not a bad thing because you're learning and you're experiencing things. And in our courses, we teach you how to do all the stone setting and all the polishing and everything. But we don't recommend that you do all of that forever because it takes too long. Usually. It depends on your business. It does depend. There are some cases where you can. But most of the jewelers that work with us, that teach with us, they will outsource elements of what they're doing. And there's nothing wrong with that. That is part of what we do. If you're building a car, I always start these analogies that I know nothing about. I know nothing about. I'm like, oh gosh, where am I going with this? But you buy the engine, I think. I don't think you start with who knows? Someone will probably watch it and be like, oh, we actually do make the whole engine. But there's definitely industries where there's better analogies, let's say that. But you don't need to do it all. And it's still handmade, and you're still the jeweler, and you can still say all of those things, And even if it's not handmade, that's okay as well. You can have a business that's not handmade, that's allowed. All small businesses we support, and whatever that you're doing, if it's something that you've set, it's your goal, it's your dream, you want to do it, then just go for it. So I want you guys to have another chat with each other about your pricing. And just have a chat about what you're doing at the moment with your pricing. Do you need to increase your price? Remember, through the lens of profitability, because that's what we're focused on in this workshop today. Do you need to go a bit bigger and bolder with what you're doing in your business? Are you playing it quite small and trying to be really safe? What can you do around pricing to increase the profit in your business? So yeah, have a little chat, and then we'll come back in a minute. Alrighty, how did it go? How was your chat? Does anyone have anything that they would like to share about pricing? Yes. That's okay.
I think what I've realised is, that sometimes I get in my own way, because you think, oh, that's a lot of money, but that's based on kind of, I don't know, my upbringing and, stuff like that. But every time I've had a commission and I've said to a client, that's going to be £499 or whatever it is, and I hold my breath, and they go, brilliant. And I'm like, wow. Like, how does that, it's me. And I think I just need to be more confident in saying, my work is worth this. You're not going to get this anywhere else. And it's sometimes hard to remember that.
Can anyone relate? Yeah. There we go, Sue. I think you spoke for the room.
I just want to say one thing.
Yes.
I realise that you don't have to be able to afford your own work to sell it. So sometimes I can sell something that there's no way I'd be able to buy it, but it doesn't matter because I'm not buying it.
Yes.
Someone else is, and that it doesn't make it mean that I have to price it lower. So I can still price it higher.
Absolutely. Love that. Any more thoughts? We're on a roll. No? Okay. Well, they were both brilliant things. And I think you answered almost Sue's kind of fear directly, which is we're not our customer. We often have similarities with our customer. That's why they connect with us. But we're all different. We're all unique. Our circumstances are all different. And if I'm commissioning a piece of handmade jewellery, then in my mind, I normally have a budget. And the interesting thing about jewellery and about money is also this idea of perceived value. And actually, we get surprised, but sometimes people don't want what we have because it's not enough. If I'm buying a gift for someone, my partner or whatever, and I've decided, right, I've got £1,000 to spend on that. I'm buying an engagement ring. I've got £3,000, and someone says this is £1,000. I might think, oh no, I want something better than that. What? And we often think, based on fear, which is totally understandable. We all have fear, and especially when it's our own work, we have an emotional connection to it. We've made it. Most of us, we just want to give it to people. We're like, I just loved it. You just have it. You just have it. But when we're building a business, we obviously have to change our mindset. And even if we still feel totally terrified, which is fine, and that's why you have these forums to come and share about it. Like, go post on the Jewelers Academy Facebook group how terrified you are, and then go and do it, because it's our actions that matter, not our feelings. Our feelings do matter to us, and we need to process those and kind of look after them, but actually what we do, and through doing it, it will change and the confidence will build. Like you said, Sue, you did it and someone was like, great, and then next time you do it and you get another great. And then next time you do it and you get another great. And also it's okay if they say, oh, that's a bit high for me. That's okay as well. We're not responsible for people's reactions to our business. That's their stuff. And yes, we need to have ways to deal with it. And sometimes it can help to write down, an exercise I get people to do is to write down how you would respond to the worst response to this. You know, what if someone says, you can't charge that much, you're not good enough, your jewelry's nowhere near, you know, just the worst thing you can imagine, which your brain has probably got somewhere there. And then how you would respond to that. And once you've got a response to that, you're kind of bulletproof because you're like, you know what, it's fine. And of course, it very, very rarely happens. Maybe someone's having a very bad day, which is not your responsibility and not your problem. But actually, you're turning down people who want what you have to offer, who want to pay for it, who have the money to pay for it, and who are, want a good experience with you. We want them to feel good about parting with their money. We want them to feel like they've made a good purchase. And honestly, for them, it's probably not about money. They just want this thing. And often it has a lot of sentimental value and it's important to them. And I think it's respectful to ourselves and to the customer to charge, something that means we can have a profitable business. Because I don't want to buy from someone and in a few years' time they're not in business anymore. In a selfish way, I want to go back and get some more. So it's really important. And thank you for sharing, because I think, just knowing that you're not alone with that fear, and they can be very real feelings that come up of, self-worth, self-esteem, that a lot of people struggle with, and honestly women struggle with a lot more. I used to be in like an entrepreneurship group, and it's so funny to see the guys talk about their business. Nothing wrong with guys, but they will brag about their pricing. I sold it for this much. And I'm like, that's great. Why can't we be a little bit more like that, And I think some of it's cultural, some of it's historical, and there's nothing wrong with that, but I think it's good to remember that and realize that it's not you. You are probably doing the hardest business possible for this element. If you are a woman and you are a maker and you're selling to other people something that you have put something personal into, then you've got all these kind of things against you. But it doesn't mean that you can't do it. I think it's just being aware of it and saying, well, I'm going to overcome that and I'm going to be brave and I'm going to go for it. And, what's the worst that can happen? And we're all here to support you with it. So awesome. Thank you guys for sharing. All right, let's move on. Point number 3 is all about communication. And I use the word communication instead of marketing because I really think that's what it's about, is talking to people, finding your customers, sharing, and having this communication. And there's all sorts of ways that this can be done. So what I would ask you to have a think about is, how do you want to communicate with your customers? You do have to communicate with your customers. So how do you want to do it? Sorry, bearer of bad news. How do you want to do it? Do you want to talk to them in person? Do you want to be emailing? Do you want them to come through your direct messages on Instagram? Do you want to be on Facebook? Do you want to be on TikTok? Do you want to be on Snapchat? Wherever you want to be, it doesn't matter. But you need to have somewhere that you want to communicate with your customers. And then what I would really focus on, especially for a handmade jewelry business, you don't need thousands of customers. We'll start with the first 100. That's our focus. So how do you have 100 conversations in the next year? How do you build that? And that's up to you. There's lots of different ways that you can do it. But I would encourage you to go for deeper conversations with fewer people than try and reach thousands of people, strangers who you don't know, who look at your thing for a second and then it's gone and there's no real interaction. So I'd focus on the depth of the conversation and also just really connecting with someone, because then you enjoy it. It's not marketing where you're kind of sending something out and you feel a bit kind of gross about it. It's not you, and you feel inauthentic and they feel a bit like, what is this weird thing that's come from nowhere? But how do you want to talk to people? How do you want to be yourself? We've all got different personalities in this room. I know quite a few different personalities in this room. Lovely different personalities. The way that we talk is different. The way that we joke about things is different. Our sense of humour is different. So bring all of that. We don't want to just have this kind of blank corporate brand. Nobody wants to buy from that. They want to know about you and all your quirks and the things that we like about you, the things that we don't like about you. It's much more interesting to buy from a human than it is from something that's faceless. So I want you to have a think again together for a minute and just have a think about, how do you communicate with people now? and how might you change that so that you can have some conversations that you enjoy, that your customers enjoy, and we're taking the focus away from sales. The sales will come. If you connect with people, the sales will come because it's just a natural progression. But how do you have more meaningful conversations, and what will that look like for you? So I'll give you just a couple of minutes to have a look at that. All right. Did you have any interesting discussions about how you could communicate with your customers? Any thoughts? Any ideas? Any dancing? Yeah? Someone's dancing.
Oh gosh, no. It was just going to be an observation, not a microphone thing. But I love selling actually on craft fairs. That is where I actually get all the banter from people. And no, that's how you sort of get people in. I think it was quite funny. I had a market recently, and we had a marked space, and there was a white line. And they're saying you can cross it. It's not a COVID restriction. They're saying they jumped over the line. It was the same market, wasn't it? But then I actually get a sale from her because you got a lovely sort of interaction and have that conversation. And there's so many times they sort of say to me, "Oh, you made this." I say, yes. Isn't it obvious? Obviously, I kept that bit out, that it was obvious. But anyway, that was my observation. But doing it face to face is, it's a huge thing for me anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's good for all of us to sell in person at some point. Yeah. I think that is a really good thing to do. I know I started with craft fairs and events because the internet didn't really exist much back then. There was just eBay, that was it, nothing else. So I think you're right, and I think it helps build confidence as well because you have that backwards and forwards, whereas sometimes if you've only ever sold online, I mean there's nothing wrong with having an online business, and a lot of us do now and they can be really successful, but if you've only ever done it, you miss out some of that feedback of, people just saying, "Oh my goodness, that's so gorgeous," and "Oh, what are these, these are pearls, what kind of stones do you work with, and where are you based?" Just the small talk even that we get in person is really important. So if you have mainly focused on online, I think doing events is a really good way, even if you're not selling a lot at the events, to build some of your confidence and some of that kind of communication. And some people are great at events. Some people are just natural sellers. We all know those people who are just like networkers and everyone's crowding to them. But even if you're really quiet, I've seen people at events who are like just making, just kind of, and just very, if you're a quiet seller, that's okay. You don't have to pretend to be somebody that you're not. And I think that we all love buying from people who are just being themselves. Obviously not the most grumpy version of themselves, like have some breakfast that day, make sure you got a warm coat and all of that. But it feels really relaxing to be around someone who's being themselves. And so I think when I first started selling, I thought, I need to be like this market person. And then I realized that's not who I am. Like I have a slightly different way of dealing with people, and that's okay. So I think, permission to be yourself with selling is also really important. I feel like we could talk about this one for ages, but I am running out of time. So I'm going to just whiz through the last two and wrap up. And then we've got some more workshops coming today as well, which hopefully some of you guys are sticking around for. Also, I've been reminded to plug the cupcakes. Dun dun! We have many cupcakes. Got my face on so you can eat that. And there's just general refreshments over there, so help yourself kind of in between things. And also we have this gorgeous flower wall, and we've got like a selfie frame, so we'd love you afterwards to come up and just take pictures and, join with people who you're with as well and make new friends today, because I think that that's really almost the most valuable thing you'll probably get out of today is the people that you meet. And make sure you exchange each other's, details, whatever that is, Instagram, emails, whatever, because knowing these people is what's going to really help you to stay the course. And also, just if you're struggling with something, you can give them a call and say, "Oh my goodness, this customer." And you can talk about it and then move on. So I definitely encourage you to do that. So let's talk about the final two. So we've talked about products, we've talked about your pricing, we have talked about your communication. So the next thing that's really important for a profitable jewellery business is how you spend your time. And I think someone said to me this morning, "I waste loads of time," which I think we can all relate to that. But what I would say is it's totally fine to spend your time doing things that you want to do, whether that's watching Netflix and eating chocolate or, going for walks or like playing with your cat or whatever. That isn't wasting time. But when you have scheduled time to work on your business, that is when we need to be really focused. And I think the key to not feeling like we're wasting time or procrastinating is to have a plan, to have a schedule, and to know what you're doing. I would really struggle if I woke up every day and just said, I need to just grow a business today, and it was that general. Oh my goodness, I would not do anything that day. I need to know, and I think that I've learned this over the years, what I'm doing. So, okay, today I'm doing some photography. And give yourself more time than you think. So today I'm doing photography. I'm going to take all my pictures. I'm going to get them all wrong the first time. So I also need to do it next week and the week after. In fact, the next 4 weeks on a Monday, I'm doing photography. So give yourself time to make mistakes as well. If it's the first time you've done something, assume it will go wrong and double book it, because otherwise you're expecting perfection from yourself. If you hired somebody new and you said, can you take some pictures of this today, something you've never done before, and you expected them to be perfect at the end of the day, that would be really unkind. So don't be unkind to yourself as a boss. Give yourself extra time to do things. Schedule in time to make mistakes, and block out your time as well. So it's entirely up to you how you do this. Different people have different personalities. I know some people will schedule like every half an hour. I like to do blocks. My main thing is every day I just have one focus that I have to get done, and everything else is a bonus. So today it's this event. But on Monday it might be I need to get the podcast done, and that's it. And I will do lots of other things most probably, but that's the main thing. If I'm tired or whatever happens, it's like, okay, well I have to get this done, and the rest. And some days you just fly. We all know those days where we're like on fire, ticking off the to-do list, it's awesome. And some days it's just not happening, and you just need to give yourself a break. And that's okay. I think it can be hard being your own boss because we're much harder on ourselves than we would be on someone else. But always ask yourself, if I was employing someone, is this a kind thing to ask them to do? If they're sick, should I make them work? No, of course not. If their child isn't well, should I make them guilty? No, of course not. So treat yourself kindly, because you might be your boss for the next 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, and you want to feel good about that. And you want to enjoy yourself. And if you do 1 hour of work that's really good, you don't do any more work today, that's fine. You don't have to work really hard. It does help if you know what you're doing and you plan it and you structure it. And I think we feel good about ourselves when we make a plan and we stick to it. So it's better to make a smaller plan, a more manageable plan, and do it, than to say, oh, well, today I need to finish the website. Well, how close are you to finishing that website? Because that could take 3 months. So just how are you spending your time? And the other element of this is what we've talked about already a little bit, is are there things that you don't really need to be doing that somebody else could do a lot better, and it would help to grow your business? So photography is a key one for me. That's the first thing I would outsource. Accountants are really important as your business grows. Gosh, I would not be anywhere without an accountant. I didn't start that way. I started doing my own, but eventually that was something that I was like, because it's not just time, it's also stress. How much time do you stress about doing that? I spend 5 days stressing about it and then 3 days doing it. That's a lot of days, whereas if I could pay someone else and I can focus on building my business, then actually it's much more profitable. So have a think, and again, the making process. So there are any things that can be automated, there are any things that could be outsourced. If you're really good at making something, but there's one bit you can't do, okay, it's great to learn how to do it, but also you could just get someone else to do it. From a business perspective, that's a clever decision. In the long term, you might choose you want to learn to do it yourself, that's fine. But remember, it's a business, and so it's much more important that you are making the right decisions that's going to lead to profit, it's going to bring more income in, which means that you have more freedom to make other decisions as well. So that's a really important one. And after the workshop, maybe you can brainstorm about that as well. The final one is about your strategy. And is your business strategy one that is profitable? And again, this is about setting yourself up for success instead of setting yourself up for failure. And nobody can run a profitable jewellery business if their whole strategy is just not profitable. So if you're selling to shops and galleries and it takes you 8 hours to make each piece, It's not going to work. It's not going to work because shops and galleries need turnover. And there needs to be big profit margins so that you get a profit and they get a profit. So the book will help you work through this because it is a more meaty subject, but you need to make sure that it makes sense. How many pieces of jewelry are you making each year? How much income can you expect on average from those pieces? And if we look at our profit figures of around 20% net profit, you might get a bit more as a handmade jewelry, you might get 30%, but what will you have at the end? And is it possible? So I think it's really useful to do some scenario planning for yourself and just work out, does this concept work? And that's what I was talking about at the beginning with the story I told you about PayPal. Proving a concept to yourself is really important. Proving that this model works, because then it's just tweaking it. But if the model doesn't work, then we need to make some changes, because you can build a business that is unprofitable where you're selling loads of stuff. And that's really disheartening in the long run. So that's something I would really encourage you to look at, is that kind of strategy. And if you don't have a strategy, that's fine. We can make one. We get to choose everything. It's our business. So, you know, and what I mean by strategy is, are you selling collections online? Or are you mainly selling commission and high-end pieces, in which case they need to be costing more, you need to be charging more. How many of those pieces do you want to make a year? Are you selling one piece each month for £3,000? That would be a strategy. Or are you selling 100 pieces each month for £40 each? That's a different strategy. And so understanding and making a decision, don't let the customer choose for you. Don't just make stuff and say, you choose what my business strategy is. We choose the business strategy, we try it. If it doesn't work, we change it. And that feels really good as a business owner, because you get to make decisions, you get to learn, evaluate, and then you get to move on. So I hope that's been helpful. Thank you guys so much for coming and joining me in the first workshop.